And first up, a story about the train drivers calling for an urgent inquiry into the condition of the main Sydney-Melbourne railway line, which they describe as a disaster waiting to happen. Last month, speed restrictions became so pervasive on the Victorian leg of the journey that passengers had to go by bus between Wodonga and Melbourne, while a major freight carrier warned of potential injuries to drivers and damage to stock. The rail union blames the Australian Rail Track Corporation for a bungled billion-dollar infrastructure upgrade in which concrete sleepers replaced wooden ones, a claim the government-owned corporation denies, blaming instead decades-old faulty foundations on nearly a third of the Victorian track. But the 7:30 report has also identified many examples of faulty track on the New South Wales side of the border. Matt Peacock reports.
It's Australia's busiest rail line, linking the country's two largest cities, with 4 XPT passenger services running daily between Sydney and Melbourne and up to 30 freight trains. But a multi-million-dollar infrastructure upgrade replacing wooden sleepers with concrete has train drivers and their union claiming the line is in worse condition than it's ever been.
Anyone that goes on any of those tracks will tell you that it shakes and it rattles and it rolls, unlike any other track across Australia.
The way the tracks are at the moment is it is a matter of time before a train derails.
Last month, the freight operator Pacific National warned there is a high potential for rough track to cause injuries to drivers, damage to locomotives, wagons and loading. The track conditions were so bad, in fact, that the passenger service in Victoria was abandoned altogether because of multiple speed limits, and the XPT was replaced by coaches between Wodonga and Melbourne.
It is unfortunate that the speed restrictions had to be put on, but we have to weigh up the safety issues against the issues of maintaining transit time.
There's disagreement about the cause of the line's parlous state, but even the chief executive of the ARCT, the federal government's Australian Rail Track Corporation, David Marchant, doesn't dispute the effect.
It is a rough ride, and nobody would deny that, including me. The issue is that's the issue we need to rectify.
The problem is mud that's pumped up between the new sleepers by pressure from the train wheels. This mud then washes the stone ballast away, leaving the concrete sleepers and the track exposed.
As the heavy trains are moving over that track, they are forcing the sleepers to go down as they would, and the dirt underneath, because it's wet, is getting pumped out.
Since the concrete sleepers have been laid, according to the Rail Bus and Tram Union, hundreds of new mud holes have appeared. The union's loco drivers, who requested anonymity to safeguard their jobs, say they now worry about the safety of those on board the trains.
Yeah, driver, we'll be serving lunch in approximately 2 or 3 minutes. I was just wondering if you could cut the speed back a little bit, probably for about 20 minutes. It just gets a little bit hard for someone when it's rocky.
It's frightening. And, you go to work each day and you were really concerned about if you're going to get to where you're going at the end of your shift. You're just driving your train normally and all of a sudden you hit this bad hole in the road or some track defect and it shakes the whole train around.
According to the ARTC, the mud holes responsible for the rough rides are the result of recent rain and were not caused by laying of the new sleepers.
As many drivers have actually said the opposite, that the track's never been better since the concrete sleepers have been there.
I've been on the job for a hell of a lot of years, and this is the worst, without a doubt, the worst that I've ever seen.
The real mud hole problem, according to David Marchant, is confined to a section of Victorian track where inferior ballast was laid in the 1970s.
5 years ago, we spent about $9 or $10 million putting new ballast on top of the old ballast. We did that 8 years ago as well, and what happened is the ballast has slowly sunk into these holes.
But the mud holes aren't just restricted to Victoria. They're north of the border as well. Here at the tiny town of Tallong, the mud is so bad that you can scarcely see the sleepers. And the trains coming through here have had speed restrictions placed on them virtually ever since the sleepers were laid.
vast sections of the track where you'll go for 100, 200, 300 metres, and all you'll see is mud coming up between the sleepers and the railhead. You cannot even see the ballast.
Further south in Wagga Wagga, Karen Brill noticed the difference in her house next to the railway line when the new sleepers were installed. And what happens when a train comes through?
Okay, the whole track just bends and bows, and the carriages just bounce along on there, and it's scary as.
The ARTC blames a small mud hole it says it's now fixed. Karen Brill's lived here for 17 years, but it's only since the concrete sleepers were laid that trains began shaking the house. This video shot from her backyard shows how fast the trains go by.
All the carriages just bounce, and you can hear the carriages, not carriages, the containers more so, they just bounce all the way through, and it's so noisy. It's very scary actually. You sort of think they're going to come off.
Although mud holes are clearly visible as far north as Tallong in New South Wales, the ARTC insists the problem's limited only to a section of the Victorian track.
This problem is predominantly around 80 kilometres in the North East Line in Victoria, and it's predominantly because the base foundations in the 70s on that track was not up to the standards that we'd normally require.
And this is over the whole of that track between Sydney and Melbourne. It's not just an 80 kilometre stretch. If anybody from ARTC wants to ride in any of our trains, they will see that I'm not sitting here telling stories. It's a fact of life.
During November and December, in various sections of the track, we're going to go underneath and cut out the historical ballast that's still sitting there and replace it with the standard of ballast we normally use, and therefore break the back of this problem forever.
Here, New South Wales Rail Corps is installing new concrete sleepers on Sydney's light rail network, with the foundations carefully prepared before the sleepers are laid. According to the Rail Union's Assistant New South Wales Secretary, Dave Matthey, himself a freight train driver on the Southern Line, the difference is obvious.
As you see on this train, this is concrete sleepers done by Rail Corp. And wherever they've done it, it's done properly.
Smooth.
Smooth as. You can even put your cup up on the shelf.
You're sure about this?
Yeah, positive, I trust. But out in the country where ARTC have done the track, you would never be able to do that.
Unlike Railcorp, claims the union, the ARTC's used a far cheaper insertion method to lay its sleepers on the Southern Line.
When they push the sleeper, they pull the old sleeper out, push the new sleeper in, the new concrete sleeper in, they've got to dig away part of the base and they push away that foundation. Then they put the new ballast on top. It's a cheap and nasty way of laying concrete sleepers.
For drivers on the Southern Line, the trip remains a nightmare where they fear the worst.
Here's the stuff up. These guys are supposed to be per-way engineers. That's their work. They're supposed to be able to fix the train tracks, but they're giving us a substandard tool to do our jobs.
If something is not done, and I mean very soon, on this track south of Sydney, something is going to happen, and it is going to be a major incident.
The ARTC flatly denies that an accident is likely, saying the trains are being constantly monitored and citing an August report from Worley Parsons which states it is concluded that locomotive NR112 is not likely to derail during operations under the prevailing track conditions and speed regimen. At the time of that test, though, nearly 70% of the Victorian line was subject to speed limits.
Effectively, the issue is that the safety is paramount. That's why there are speed restrictions.
It's yet another infrastructure bungle, warns the rail union, and heads should roll.
What we also think needs to happen is an independent inquiry and an audit of the work that has been undertaken by the ARTC to date using billions of dollars of taxpayers' money.
We've upgraded the track's performance quite substantially. So in a historical perspective, the reality is that mud holes were there and actually had quite significant effects pre-1998.
For the drivers who ride the track each day, their question remains, will the line be fixed properly before a serious accident occurs?
It is nerve-wracking, there's no doubt about that. And you knock off work of an evening you think, oh, we made it today, I hope we'll make it home tomorrow.
That report from Matt Peacock.